What's up guys, in this video I'm going to show you common keyboard Excel shortcuts that will help you work faster. So let's get started with opening a new workbook and closing the current active workbook. If we wanted to open a new workbook, we can just do Control N and that will open up a workbook called Book 1. Now when I say something like Control, it means that you have to hold on to the Control button and then press the letter N. And let's say we wanted to close the current active workbook. There's two ways we can do that. We can either hold on to Control and then press W, or we can also use the other keyboard shortcut. So let me open up the new workbook again. We can use the keyboard shortcut for Alt F4, and I'm going to hold on to Alt and press F4, and that'll close the current active workbook again. Now let's say you have worksheets in your Excel workbook, and you want to move to the next worksheet without having to click on anything. What you can do is that you can hold on to Control and press page down to go to the next worksheet. And if you wanted to go to the previous worksheet, then you can do Control page up. When we type out a text or a formula, we might make a typo in the cell. As shown in this value here in cell A1, Abe has a new car. We have multiple R's that shouldn't belong, and we should only have a single R for the car, right? Well, what you can do is that you can edit the cell directly by pressing F2, and I'll go to the end of the text and then just delete the two letters for R. And if we had a formula, right, where we try to find the sum of these two numbers, but instead of typing out the correct formula, we do cell C2 plus cell D3, we would get the wrong answer. Well, you can press F2 again to change the D3 to a D2, and that will give us the correct output this time. One common thing we would do is to select the entire row or column, or select multiple rows or column. Well, instead of using a mouse to click on the column here, or select the row here, we can use the keyboard shortcut to select the entire row by pressing Shift space, or select the entire column by doing Control space. Now, let's say you want to select the last row based on the current active cell. Well, what you can do is that you can do Shift space, and then you can do Control Shift down arrow key until you reach the X here, which is the last row. For columns, you would do Control space and then do Control Shift right until you reach column F, which is where the X is. Now, if you want to enter the current date, then you can just do Control semicolon to get today's date. But what about time? Well, you can do Control Shift semicolon for the current time. And if you wanted to get the combination of the current date and current time, then you can do Control semicolon space and then Control Shift semicolon again to get the combination of the current date and time. One of the most popular keyboard shortcuts is undo. So let's say you're a teacher grading students' test scores, and you have Sonia as 100, Paul 90, Adam 85, and you accidentally type out Steve as 30. Well, if you wanted to undo that grade, you can just do Control Z, and it'll return to the previous state. But if you wanted to redo that grade, then you can do Control Y, and it'll bring the 30 back. At your work, it might be common to see a column of numbers and then sum those numbers up. Well, instead of typing out equals to sum, or doing it manually by just clicking each cell individually, you can use the keyboard shortcut for auto sum by holding it down to Alt and then pressing equals equals, and it'll automatically sum up all the values, consecutive values within the column. But let's say you have a blank value here, right? 100, 200, blank, and 300, 400. If we try to do the auto sum again, it's going to stop at the blank value here and instead just sum up the 300 and 400 together. If we have data that looks like a table and we want to select all the ranges in that table, we can do Control and then A to select all the used range in that table. Now let's say that we color-coded a cell underneath this table here as yellow, and if we do the same thing, Control A, we're not able to select the yellow region, but instead, if we do Control Shift and End, it'll also include the yellow region here. Let's say that you have a range of cells here, and we have some hidden rows like rows 3 and 4, and that some of the text in the columns are too big for the column width. So we would need to find a way to auto size them. So if we wanted to fix the rows and column sizes, then we can do we can select the entire range and do Alt H OI to adjust the column width. And for the rows, you can do Alt H OA to show the rows and adjust the row height as well. So if you wanted to do a filter, right, if you want to apply an auto filter in each column header, then you can do Control Shift L, and it looks like some of the words are hidden, so you can just do Alt H O I again. And if you want to convert this into a table, then you can do something like Control T and click OK. Or you can use the other keyboard shortcut for converting to a table is Control L, and you do the same thing, click OK. The keyboard shortcuts I'm going to show you here are the ones that I use the most at my work, and that's fill values down, fill values up, fill values to the right, and fill values to the left. So let's say you have the name Don in cell A2, and you want to repeat the name until it reaches cell A8 or where the X is. Well, what you can do is that you can select Don and do Control Shift down, and then do Control D to fill the name all the way down. And if you didn't want to do Control D, an alternative would be Alt H F I D. And the same thing for Bon, right? If you want to fill all the way to the top, you can't do Control U since that's for underline. But what you can do is that you can do Control Shift up until you reach the cell that you want to fill up, and do Alt H F I U. And for the name Macy, if you want to fill it all the way to the right, you can just select the entire range here, or a single value if you want. Do Shift right arrow key and do Control R. But the alternative to Control R would be Alt H F I R. And you're starting to see the pattern with the alternative method, right? Now for Stacy, if we want to fill it to the left, we can just do the same thing as before. Select the name, and then do Shift arrow key to the left one time, and do Alt H F I L. In column A here, we have a list of numbers from 10 to 50 in sequential order of 10. And in column B, we have the output where we're going to multiply the number in column A by 10, or the value in cell I1. So let's do equals to this cell here, A2, times I1. And we get the correct output, which is 100, right? 10 times 10 equals 100. Now, if we fill this value down, Control D, we get the values of 0 this time. Well, that's because when you're dragging the formula down, it's dragging all the cell references down as well, unless you freeze it with the $ symbols. So in this case, we have A2 times I1, and then A3 times I2, which is a value that doesn't exist here, and A4 times I3, and so on and so on. Now, in order to fix this, we can use a keyboard shortcut to freeze the reference, and we can just go to the formula bar directly, and then click on F4, or press F4, and we get the two $ here where it freezes the column and the row number, $I$1. So if we press enter, and then we drag this formula down this time, we get the correct output this time, as it's all I1 in place. Now, if we didn't just want to freeze rows and columns, but only rows or columns, then we can do F4 again, and this one only freezes the row but not the column. Press F4 again to freeze only the column but not the row, and F4 again to freeze no values. So you can toggle between which values you want to freeze, or which cell reference you want to freeze, by pressing F4 multiple times. Column A shows the last name, followed by comma, space, and then the first name. Column B, I used a function to extract the first name, and in column C, I used another function to extract the last name. So let's say you want to copy all the data in column B and C and paste them to another location in the worksheet. You can do Control C, and then if you try to do Control V, you get the header names, but all the values you have is not available here. And that's because when you do a regular paste, the values that it gets copied is the function or the formula, and the function or formula gets pasted instead of the actual values. If you wanted the actual values, what you can do is that instead of Control V, you can do Control Alt V, go to values, and that will paste all the values that you got from the previous output here. So if you want to do paste values, the keyboard shortcut for that is Control Alt V. Let's say that you have blank values in the range of cells here, and you wanted to find a way to replace the blank values with another value. Well, what you can do is that you can reference the current table or the current range of values, do Control G, go to Special, and then click on blank, click OK. And that'll highlight all the blank cells here. And if you want to replace them, you can do Control H, find what you can leave as blank, and replace all the blank values as NA for not available. And click on Replace All. And you get this pop-up saying all done, we made 4 replacements. Click OK. And that's a very quick way to replace values. If you had a worksheet with random background colors like this, and you wanted to find a way to get rid of all the background colors or like do no fill, then you can do Control Shift End and use a keyboard shortcut for no fill, which is Alt H H N. And that will remove all the background colors. It's very common that when we work with data, we have to format these values in a certain way, like these decimal points as percentage or these numbers as a currency. If you want to do an easy way to format stuff, you can do Control Space. And for column A, let's format this whole thing as a percentage. Do Control 1. And we get the Format Cells menu popped up. Go to percentage. And you can leave this as 2 decimal places. Click OK. And the whole thing gets formatted as a decimal now. Now, another way to do this without doing Control 1 is that you can do Alt H E. And then if you want to go to 2 decimal places, you can do Alt H 0 and Alt H 0 again 2 times. For currency, we can select the entire column, do Control 1, and then we can go to the currency menu here, and we can leave this part as is and show the positive and show any numbers that's negative as like red in parentheses. Click OK, and we get just that. Now for numbers, this is categorized as general, but we want to format it as a number. So if we do Control Space, Control 1, go to number, and we're going to use a comma separator, leave decimal places as 2, and show any negative numbers highlighted in red with parentheses. Click OK. And that did the job as well. Now, something that I personally do all the time is code in VBA to automate a lot of my work tasks. And if that's something you do as well, then you can open the VB editor very easily by pressing the keyboard shortcuts for Alt F11. And with this VB editor open, we can start coding right away. And that would be it for most of the Excel keyboard shortcuts you would commonly use at work. If you want to see other things you can do in Excel, then be sure to check out this video I uploaded before, where I show you how you can create your own custom functions and use them in any workbook. If this video does well, then I'll be sure to make a part 2. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and comment down below what else you'd want to see. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Until then, I'll see you guys next time.